will have in enforcing compliance by Woodland Park school district, should the district choose not to comply. What steps would the district need to take to demonstrate that they have enhanced the American birthright standards sufficiently to be in compliance? Thank you. And so a couple, I don't know, like about a week and a half or so later, I get an email from Dana Smith, which was really cool, because sometimes you write these things and you don't get anything. So it says, dear Ms. Wilson, thank you for reaching out to the Colorado Department of Education with your questions about the Colorado Academic Standards and Social Studies. As you know, local boards have until fall 2024 to adopt their standards that meet or exceed the revised Colorado Academic Standards and Social Studies. They have a few different ways of approaching this requirement. They can adopt the Colorado Academic Standards as is. They can create their own, or they can adopt one or more other sets of standards and supplement them as necessary to ensure that their final standards meet or exceed Colorado academic standards. Well, yeah, I I already wrote that, right? I understand this. The Colorado Department of Education reached out to Woodland Park School District to understand their intent with the standards after we received inquiries about their decision. This is his response. So this was, I guess, their superintendent. While American Birthright is not adequate as a curriculum itself, the Woodland Park School District has adopted the American Birthright as a curriculum guidance against which we will review and select the potentially develop instructional materials to use in the classroom. This curriculum guidance, along with our additional district requirements for education on the Holocaust and financial literacy, which are part of the Colorado standards, okay, just so you know, they're already there, will ensure our curriculum meets or exceeds state standards. I don't know, when I read this, it sounds like a lot of semantics that the writer was using with this when he says, well, we're going to use these as curriculum guidance. Anyway, it says, you may already know, but in Colorado, local school boards have the authority to choose curriculum, which I did know, that is sufficient to meet the learning goals described in the standards. In fact, our state constitution has protected our local districts' control over curriculum and textbooks since the very beginning of our state in 1876. And I knew, this local control in education has a long history here. And then it says for more, then she gives me the link to the standards. And it says families or organizations that have concerns about their district's academic standards or curriculum should contact their district leaders and elected members of their local school board of education directly. While we expect districts to meet the statutory requirements related to the standards, neither the State Board of Education nor CDE are granted authority by the Colorado General Assembly to review local curricula or standards. Ultimately, the voters in each district have the power to elect local school boards that share their vision for public education. I hope this information was helpful. So in other words, they can't do a blessed thing.
Wow.
Hey, Kathy.
Yeah.
I never. Do you have any sense as to if that person reached out to Woodland Park because of your inquiry, or when they, when Woodland Park first adopted, just as a general matter of business? Or
I don't think it was me, because I
Okay.
vaguely remember in the back of my brain that I read an article in the Colorado Sun or in the Denver Post when they first, or Chalkbeat, Colorado, could have been
Mhm.
Chalkbeat, Colorado. That when Woodland Park first announced they were going to adopt it, that some of the public, some of the people who lived in that school district were really upset about it. And so my guess is that's when they first heard about it.
Okay, so there's no reason to think that the Woodland Park School Board has been alerted that the League of Women Voters is interested in this. Sorry, I'm a little paranoid these days, folks.
Yeah, I understand. I don't think so. I would be very much surprised. I mean, I never sent
Okay.
anything to them, and I would be really surprised if Dana Smith did,
Sure.
because I
And-
just, yeah,
Yeah, and she had needed to gather these answers before,
right,
prior. Okay,
right. And so she had obviously, they wrote to her, CDE, I don't know whether it was Dana Smith or someone else, at CDE who takes care of the standards, must have put an inquiry in to them that they got, and she had this in quotes, what she wrote to me, she just grabbed immediately from the whatever document, they had sent
Okay.
her in response, or the Department of Ed in response. So, yeah, but it's
anybody know how many school districts there are in the state?
178.
178, yeah.
We know
Thank
this
you.
on the LAC, don't we?
Yeah.
See, that's awesome. Awesome. Thank you. See, I sadly would have thought there were more,
Oh,
just because
there's a lot of
Um,
mountains. We have a lot of mountains.
it's true. It's true. But there's one, I don't know if it's Arapahoe or Adams County
Uh-huh.
that has 12 districts that
Oh.
cross its borders.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a,
Well,
Yeah.
that's the area is really
Yeah.
big, and it goes across so many different.
both of those counties are enormous and cover serious rural and urban stretches.
Mhm.
So it makes sense that there would be different districts serving those different communities.
Yeah.
But 12 districts within, or wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
They have a lot of population. I can understand. We only have 2 here, and they're big. Thompson School District is big, and Poudre
Uh-huh.
is big, because we have a lot of rural areas that are serviced by those districts. So, yeah.
I was trying to think, I recall I get the newsletter from the Freedom of Information Coalition.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They had an article in there linked from CPR that's
Mhm.
about Woodland Park, and it talks about, I hadn't read the article, but it had says something about gag orders and mental health, and
Mhm.
it's just not a
Yes.
good environment for teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Surprise.
Yeah, there are gag orders on staff and administration from talking to media, and the district, without explanation, opted to not reapply for $1.5 million in funding specifically for mental health professionals in the schools.
Mhm.
They said that's not up to the school district. We're about academics.
Oh, wow.
Very narrow.
Mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm. Blinders.
Yeah, that most
Mhm.
definitely. And it's scary because, especially now that we found out there's really no recourse and no, what's the word I want? consequence.
Recall. That's the
There's no-
recourse.
Yeah, but they put it back on the voters, back on
Right.
voters,
Mhm.
and that
That's
means the
what's-
voters have to know,
Right,
Linda.
yes. Well,
Yes.
that's what they did in Thompson, at the Thompson School District, was about 10 years ago. They had this reform movement and they elected people who wanted to get rid of all sorts of art. You were only going to teach reading and writing. They
And
wanted,
arithmetic. Yeah.
and you were lucky if you got arithmetic. And then because they didn't know what the, I mean, they were just really, really extreme. And the next election, they were soundly defeated. But it took a lot of
The
people
pendulum
writing
swings.
yeah, it took a lot of letter writing to the newspaper, all sorts of. We had a transparency meeting that I organized. So, yeah.
You know what?
so, I mean, it was really awful though, what they did, and they really demoralized the teachers. Teachers left. They still don't make, I don't think their pay is not what it was before this happened.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's the year we moved here, because it was 2015. And the school district, the school board elections were like in the news all the time. And we got here and I'm trying to figure out what side is what, because we had been through upheaval like that in California, Southern California, a few years before that we lived through. And so it took me a while to figure out who was who, being, just brand new here. But it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think that happened in Jefferson County too.
Yeah.
They had an election that brought in a lot of very conservative, not teacher friendly,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it was just, it really once that happens, you can get rid of them. But once it happens, they leave some devastation, they really hurt the school districts when they do that.
Yeah.
Well, and the trust there, it just blows any sense of unity or
Mhm.
Well, we have contentious school board meetings
Yeah, yeah,
here.
yeah.
I mean, it's just, and I think they're so widespread across the country. And then people wonder why we don't have people going into education and why we have a shortage of teachers.
Why would
There-
you?
Yeah, there is a really good, if this was going on when I decided to become a teacher, I don't think I would have done it,
Yeah.
well,
Anyway.
same with healthcare, with
Right.
nurses being spat on and
Right.
and it's just horrible.
Mhm.
It is. It really
So
is.
I guess we just watch this. I don't think there's anything we can do about it. Obviously, if CDE and the state board can't do anything, I don't think the league can either, other than hopefully if the leagues that are in areas where this happens or this might happen, that they take on the education portion of this to try to get the word out as much as possible.
Yeah, our Pikes Peak Region League does cover Teller County.
Oh,
I
good.
haven't yet reached out to the spokesperson there. Just won't make excuses. And but I will. I know that I'm sure they're aware of this.
Mhm. Yeah.
They've been dealing also with, have you all heard about their ranchers in El Paso County butting heads on, I'm not really sure what, but it seems to be a racial thing.
Oh my gosh.
So white ranchers attacking a black family. So I know I've talked to Shelley about that one. So if she's on that, I know she's on top of Woodland Park.
Uh-huh.
And it's crazy what's going on in the Springs. Anyway, have you guys seen Their mayor, they're going to a mayoral runoff.
Yeah, what is that? Wayne Williams? Is that what's happened with him? Yeah. Who thought
Wayne
it was gonna
Williams got 17%, and someone else, I can't remember his name, he's a Nigerian immigrant, got like 34%.
Mhm.
And so they're going to a runoff, but I was like, wow,
Yeah.
the Springs have changed. I thought Wayne was a shoo-in after John Suthers, you
Yeah.
know?
I think he thought he was a shoo-in.
I think he probably did. And I'm a fan of Wayne. Wayne's one of the good ones, you know. But wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. I thought we'd go over some of the key legislation for this session. And I broke it up. I'm gonna go over what I've been working on. That's gonna feed into the report that I have to write anyway. And then Kathy is gonna pick up a few more bills that she covered, because she and I have been, well, I'm gonna just go over this. Okay, so far as of today, and I would be really surprised if there are any more bills that are introduced, but there are 673 that have been introduced during this session. So it's been crazy in the last 2 weeks or so. It's really been crazy. Anyway, 55 of the bills were related to pre-K 12th grade education and school finance. That's what Kathy and I cover. Okay, we don't do higher ed, because that's Tony who does higher ed. Out of those 55 bills, Kathy and I covered 30 of them. And some of the other education bills were followed by healthcare, because they had, like, one was CPR and there was a mental health, and there are a few of those. But we said, hey, do you want to follow these, because it's more in your bailiwick? So they picked those up. And some were followed by the LAC Justice and Jedi groups, because they fell into their baskets. And they picked those up. Other bills amongst the 55 that we didn't cover were like small adjustments that to bills that had been passed in previous years that needed to be tweaked, or they were incremental funding corrections that needed to be corrected. Or they were bills that we just didn't follow because they didn't relate to league positions. Okay, so that, or they were such minor bills that they didn't need our advocacy. Wouldn't you say, Kathy, that covers pretty much what it was?
Yep, that's a good summary. Yep.
Okay. Higher ed had 18 related bills. And Tony, as I said, Tony was the one who followed those. Many of them she chose just to monitor, to see what was happening with those. There weren't any that I can remember in the higher ed that were, really ones that caught our attention big time. I'm trying to think.
I would say a couple of the best ones, I think what I would consider the more important ones were the ones having to do with the adult, like getting adults their high school equivalency or high school diplomas. So that kind of thing. And I think, did they get through, or are they almost through?
Some of them, I don't know. Who knows if they actually were heard today?
Yeah.
Because, the lists are huge that they're going through. And it's very interesting because the Republicans, to kill time, are asking them to read the bills in full, okay, before they vote. And I sat here and listened to that happen a few times. So they're trying to kill time. So back to the ones, I saw a few major themes in in the bills, the education bills this time. And public school finance was probably the biggest, most important theme in this General Assembly session. And Senate Bill 287 is the Public School Finance Act. And they passed it today. Today, third reading this morning, with no amendments. So it's going back to the Senate for whatever final things they do before they send it to the governor. So for the 2023-24 fiscal year, the total funding is $266.6 million. And the bill sets a total program funding for the fiscal year of 2023 to 24 at $9.1 billion with a B dollars. Okay, so this is education's a huge amount of funding every year. What did I want to say with this? So there was a percentage change between last year and this year of an increase in 7.9% of money that was spent. So they really focused on how could they give education more money, okay, in different ways. And one of the things that they did, and I'm only going to do some of the things this bill has because it's like gigantic. One of the things it did was increase per pupil funding by $598.25 to $8,076. Okay, so it boosted the amount of money that the schools will get, the public schools will get per pupil by that amount, and that's a good sized jump. Okay, the one we are dancing about, but not quite dancing as hard as we would when it left the House, was this bill decreases the BS factor, the budget stabilization factor, to $141.2 million in this year. And then next year, they eliminate the BS factor completely. This is huge because that's the money they take out to use for everything else that is not education. Okay, so they're not going to do it next year and for the years to come, and it's written in the bill, which was nice. I went back just to read it. So they wanted to do it this year, and Barbara Kirkmeyer had an impassioned plea with how exactly they could do it in the House Education Committee and the House this year, how they could do it this year, and the House Education voted 7-0 to pass it. Right, but then when it went to, did I say that right? Not the House, the Senate. The Senate committee did that, and then when it went to the House, they went back to what Rachel Zenzinger wanted, which is to get rid of it next year. Okay, so anyway, but that's a big deal. They have now, I thought this was a big deal. They had $30 million earmarked for rural schools. What I didn't find out until the end of last week was this is the 5th year of 1 year funding that they kept renewing, and they kept renewing, and they kept renewing. So this isn't something that's crazy wonderful, but what this is a goal for change in the new public school finance formula that they said they would work on next year. All right, so that the rural schools would get better funding than they are now. They delayed funds for 1 year for the new at-risk formula that was changed last session because there's going to be a study that's going to inform the funding. So they said instead of creating funding for it this year, they would wait till the study is actually done and they know what they need. But that the new at-risk formula is much better than it was. I remember when they were going through that last year. Then funds for new public school finance task force is part of the bill that will create a study guidelines and report its recommendations for the new public school formula that they'll take up in 2024-25. They provide $10 million for special ed services for students in the new universal preschool program. Okay. And they are funding the currently unfunded mandate that all public school kids have to be screened for gifted and talented programs. So that law has been in effect, but they never did fund it. And now they're finally funding it. So school districts have had to pay for that. So that was the Public School Finance Act. And that's only some of the things. There were several more things like mill levy and just different other things that are part of that too. So you can go to that bill and look at it if you so choose. So then earlier in the session, they passed Senate Bill 99, and that's special education funding. This was terrific because they infused more than $40.2 million to address the Tier B special ed students' needs. And this had not had a significant change since 2006. That's how, yeah. And you think of just inflation and stuff, it's incredible. And that bill has been signed by the governor. So yay, yay. Okay, then another funding one is a pretty recent one, and that was to provide free universal preschool more equitably across Colorado. And this bill gives one-time funding for Colorado preschool providers in rural areas. And they give them a bonus for having preschool facilities for rural families. And then they give an additional one-year bonus for if they're facilities that will take infants and toddlers. Because what they want to do with this is get people into the workforce. And if they have the children that are being taken care of, that will help. And let's see, the Senate originated this bill, and it's scheduled to be heard for the second reading on the House floor tomorrow. We will see if it is heard then or what. So that's coming down like the pike. The second major area was assessment for bills this time. The first one that was introduced was Senate Bill 61, and that eliminates the state assessment for social studies. And it's a good bill. We're backing it. It makes lots of sense, and I can go in, I can go on and on about why that's a good bill. But what it will do is give $1,025,591 back to the Department of Ed for their funds, because they're not going to be giving this assessment. And that bill was moved unamended to the House floor for its second reading, but was laid over again today. So they keep pushing this one down a bit. Then today on the Senate floor, third reading of House Bill 23-1241. That is the task force, and this is actually one that Kathy followed, the task force study for K-12 accountability system. What this task force is going to do, what they did, they already had a study, and it showed that the assessment system in Colorado has inequities. And so what this bill will do, what this task force will do is that they're going to look at academic opportunities, inequities, promising practices in schools, and improvement to accountability and accreditation system. And everybody was in support of this. The State Board of Ed was in full, everybody. I don't know if anybody was knocking this one at all. So this one went through really quickly. And did I not see? I must not have seen if it passed today. Or if that, I don't think they got to it by the time I was doing this. So it was coming up in the on the Senate floor. And then there was one other one about assessments, which we opposed this time, and it was House Bill 1239. And this was called Local Innovation in Education Assessment. It wanted to eliminate as many of the state assessment as possible, except for the ones that were federally mandated, and instead use district assessments. But the sponsors ended up PIing this bill, killing this bill for now, because it was like the step too far before this task force that I was just talking about would get its findings. So they're going to return to this after they hear the recommendations for, from that task force. Finally, the third area, and this is going to be really brief, was related to discipline in schools and how it's handled. And the theme for this bill came originally from COYAC, which is the Colorado Youth Advisory Interim Session Committee from last summer and fall. And so they started this ball rolling. And I'm just going to read the titles of the bills because they pretty much say what it is. Okay. They included House Bill 1191, prohibit corporal punishment of children. That was signed. It's now law. You would think that we, anyway. Senate Bill 29 is the disproportionate discipline in public schools. That one was whittled down to a study, and it passed the House. So that's a Senate bill that passed the House, amended on the third reading. So it'll go back to what's it called when the two houses get together? I can't think of the committee where they hammer out a compromise on both views of it, of the
Committee of the whole.
No, it's not the committee of the whole.
Conference?
A conference committee, yeah, the conference
Okay.
committee. And so they'll figure out what the final bill will be, but both House passed it. They just need to decide on the amendments that were offered forward. Then the next one is 1291, procedures for expulsion hearing officers. That one passed in the House on the third reading today. And so this one gives training to the people that take care of the expulsion hearings in schools. So to help guard against bias. So it really is a Jedi kind of a bill. And the final one, which we were just monitoring, was Senate Bill 296, which is prevent harassment and discrimination in schools. And that one was scheduled for a second hearing today on the Senate floor, and they hadn't gotten to it by the time I was looking. And who knows if they have. I mean, these sessions on the floor have continued to go on and on into the evening. So, but those were themes. Then everything else was kind of a splattering of different issues. So Kathy, you had just a few that you were gonna.
Yeah, I was just going to mention a few that were interesting that are making their way through. Some are already done, but oh, by the way, that accountability, K through 12 accountability system task force, they just looked at it. It did pass. We knew it would.
We knew it would. Yeah. I mean, everybody was for that one.
Yeah. Yeah, so math is a big problem in Colorado. There was a House bill to deal with math in pre-K to 12th grade. And this was a huge bill, 24 pages, I think, that covers everything from in the schools. We work with the parents, community centers. It just every angle possible, tackling the math problem. So, and some funding with a new grant program that's being created to fund some learning centers, community learning centers, and beefing up changing the rules a little bit for another existing grant program. So anyway, it was just a full circle kind of full court press on math, and that is sailing through. It passed today in the Senate, so that's well on its way to being law shortly. There was another one on it's called the Teacher Degree Apprenticeship Program. And this enabled, it gives people a little help to earn some money while they're pursuing the teaching degree. So they're able to teach, the candidate teachers are able to teach as a student teacher or a substitute or even a teacher of record in certain circumstances while they are working toward fulfilling teacher degree requirements. So that one also passed today in the House. So that was a Senate bill. It passed in the House today. So that's on its way to getting to be law. And the last one I wanted to mention was the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact that was passed very quickly it's signed into law already. It doesn't actually go into effect until another 9 states. So it has to be 10 states total to make it effective for Colorado to be part of this. But it enables, it streamlines procedures for teachers to use their credentials across state lines. So it was sponsored by the Department of Defense. They funded a lot of the writing of the bill. So it's uniform across all the states that want to participate. And the Department of Defense was interested in it because they have so many spouses that have a teaching degree, and often it's a provisional teaching degree because they don't stay in one place long enough to get fully certified. And so this program addresses that problem, and also for fully credentialed teachers to be able to take a job in another state that's part of this compact without jumping through a lot of hoops in order to get certification in that next state. It's just streamlines the process nicely, so they don't have to spend a year fulfilling new requirements or take more coursework and things like that.
Yeah.
So that one was signed into law already, and I just checked today to see how many other states have also signed it, because in Colorado, we have until 2026 to actually put this into effect, so that in order to put it into effect, we need other states to participate. And right now there are Utah, Kansas, and Kentucky that have passed the law. Colorado was the first to pass it, so that's pretty cool. So we
we're going to lead the way.
Yeah. So we had it passed. It was March 13th. It was signed by the governors. That was really fast. And so we need a few more states to round out the list in order to make it effective. And if we don't get enough states to join by 2026, it dies. The program dies, and they'll have to start all over again.
And it was one of the things I remember them talking about was if another state that's in the compact, if their requirements for the degree don't have quite as much as ours does, then we can still require, additional courses and things like that. But it's much easier. It's much easier to.
Right. They knew teachers and teachers unions and boards of education across the states were going to have a big problem with this. So they made sure that individual states would retain the right to say what the license requirements are. And so they built in some rules that make this work. So what you would get is, in certain cases, you would be able to teach immediately with a certain, if you meet certain requirements, you can teach immediately. And then after a year, to be renewed, you would have to do the same things that a normal teacher would for that state. So you'll do the extra coursework or whatever. So yeah, I thought they had a nice way of handling that system, to make it quick and easy to get employed and up and running as a teacher, but still fulfill what each state wants to do with their teacher training programs.
Yeah. So that's a microcosm of a quick review of some of the things, you know, a good portion, but some of the things that some of the laws that have gone through or going through. Next on here, you have any suggestions for topics or speakers for this at all? If you think of anything.
I just saw Beth's note in the chat about the mental health assessment bill coming up for discussion tomorrow night. That is interesting. I think that just passed today too, in the Senate. So I was just, yeah, it was gotten through the Senate, I think now. So it's nearly done.
Yeah.
But why is that coming up for discussion?
The education, no, this is the education committee. The
Healthcare.
healthcare committee task force opted to just ask her to come and speak.
Oh, that's great. I thought that was a good bill.
And that is always a possibility. I mean, of course, the session's ending soon, so bills aren't going to be popping up. But, you know, if you all have or know that there is a particular topic a legislator is passionate and or extremely knowledgeable about, you know, let us know. We'll rope them into a discussion, a statewide presentation.
I wonder
So.
if Senator Zenzinger would do a presentation about what she would like to see happen with a new public school funding.
I like that idea.
Okay.
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Of course, it needs to remain nonpartisan, the topic.
Well, we can get Barbara Kirkmeyer.
Yeah, I think
Do we have to?
I'm
No,
serious.
I'm just joking. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Because both of them have a lot of experience with public school finance, from being on the interim committees and, you know, everything else. That pair, I think, would be a really good pair.
Yeah, it's a
have.
very good idea.
Do you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, do you want staff to pursue that, getting that on the calendar? Zenzinger and
If we
Kirkmeyer?
I think if we can, that if they'll be
Right.
willing to talk about that, you know, now.
Okay.
The other thing I was thinking of is perhaps having somebody from COYAC come and talk about the students who are involved in that interim committee. Man, when I have heard either ones that are currently on there testifying, or hello, Kat, or the ones who have graduated who come back and testify, my goodness, they are impressive. Okay, they're impressive.
Well,
So.
one of my unstated goals or ideas, I should say, not goals, is to develop a statewide youth leadership program where each league nominates, 1, 2, 3, whatever, youth from their community. We have a year-long, monthly program with all of these youth that culminates in a trip to the Capitol. And I want to somehow get Koyak involved and even have them guarantee a seat or something to, I mean, I don't know if that's even possible, but
Yeah, that would be, I think, neat. Okay.
I think we talked about the assessments, the social study assessments at this meeting before, but
mhm.
it might be a good idea to try to explain to other people what, did you notice when you attended that, not your grandmother's civics thing? They mentioned that they wanted to educate, they were registering these kids to vote, but they found that their civics education was deficient. And did you notice one of the reasons they gave is because they gave up their social study assessment?
I can, would you like me to tell you why this is such a bad assessment here in this state? I mean,
It's
bad. Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
So when they, my ears perked up when I heard that sentence, and I thought, isn't that what we just decided to do?
Yeah.
It might be a good topic for just a league meeting to explain to people why we did that, because other leagues are
Right.
saying our civics education is deficient because we got rid of our assessments.
Sure.
Yeah. Well,
Just so
well,
that you
anyway,
can,
yeah,
I mean, I believe it, but it might be good to have a meeting just to explain why we did that.
Great.
Karen, she contacted me yesterday.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think Linda's got a point. I think that's a really, really good idea. And I think, wasn't it at our LAC meeting when you were talking about that bill, Kathy, that we got a lot of pushback, even after it was explained, a lot of pushback on that, understandably. But yeah, so I think that's a really good idea. Take some time to explain it more to people.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, because like I said, the system here was terrible. Well, I mean, you couldn't use the data, and it took sometimes 3 or 4 days of assessment to give, because it's the social studies, bless you. It's not just one thing. It is a series of things, but it was not, I can go into all of the detail of why it was just poorly done here, just poorly done. So
I just think people, it might be useful to explain.
And it is taught and it is assessed. It's not assessed at the state level, and it is a requirement for graduation.
Okay.
Civics, it's all this stuff rolled together. Okay.
At Thompson School District, they used to require a year of civics, and now it's half a year.
A year. And that's because of CDE. That's the requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my son not getting away with that, so he took a year.
I only had to take a half a year
Yes, so did
back
I.
in the 80s, but I'm trying to get LWVCO involved in the Civics League or the Civics B.
Yes, I thought that was a great idea. They don't know about this. What went through this like the last 2 days, 2 or 3 days.
There's a
But I'm
Civics
gonna look.
B.
Yeah, well, you know what? You want to hear something? I was the person at the school where I taught that arranged and did the geography bee at our school.
Cool.
And one year, and this was a school for students with dyslexia. Okay.
Cool.
one year, one of my students won and got to go to the county bee
Wow.
and compete at the county bee. This was in California, so these things were big, lots of people.
Yeah.
Kyle didn't get to the state bee, if I remember correctly, because it was it was several years ago, quite a few years ago. But it was awesome. It was
Yeah,
awesome. And he did well at the state bee. I mean, at the county bee as well. But so I know about the geography bee, you know, and I had been doing that at our school for several years. So I didn't know there was a civics bee, but it's
Never
like,
heard of
that
it.
makes sense.
Well,
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Wasn't in my
There's a civics
hometown.
bee.
That's,
Yeah.
I knew.
And it's middle school. It's middle school,
Mm.
which was kind of surprising to
Yeah.
me when I looked at whatever I Googled on Saturday or Sunday when this was coming through. So
Huh.
it's not like it's a high school thing when they take civics.
Yeah.
So
Huh.
yeah.
Anyway, and I've wanted to have a civics trivia bowl
Oh,
for, you know, statewide, but haven't gotten that together either. I just thought that would be fun for adults.
uh-huh. Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
think it might be a little humiliating for
Right.
My dear husband had his letter to the editor printed today in the
I saw
Reporter
that.
Herald.
Oh, that's really good.
Thank you. Yes, he was responding to somebody else who wrote a letter to the editor about the guy had written that all men are created equal, and that's how that's a foundation of our government. And Jerry listed things like people being counted 3/5
Yeah.
human, and
Dred
and
Scott. Yeah.
the Civil War, and I mean he could have done a few more things than he did in that one, but when he was just so riled up about what he had read, and he said, I'm going to write this, I'm going to call him this, blah, blah, and he just nails it. And I'm sitting here laughing. I said, you've got to send that one in. But every letter to the editor that he submitted has been published. So
Wow.
he, you know, he researches all of this. It's
Sure.
all in the same vein. He'd do really well in a civics bee.
Or bowl.
Trivia night.
Okay.
Okay.
He's batting 1,000.
We're over time.
Yeah, I need to go. My allergies just went
Yeah, it sounds
nuts
like.
there.
Well, next meeting is scheduled for June 5th.
Okay.
So you can
Great.
put that on your calendar. And if you feel so moved to be the task force leader.
I
All right.
do have 2 people in mind that I will be hopefully recruiting
Great.
before the next meeting.
Great,
Good.
excellent. I'm happy to help whomever.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay.
All right. Well, y'all have a good evening.
Yeah, you
Right.
too.
Thank you.
See you
Yeah.
next
Okay.
time.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.